On a freezing winter night, an elderly woman opened her cabin door and found two tiny German Shepherd puppies shivering in the snow. She didn't know where they had come from or why they were left alone in such brutal cold. With compassion in her heart, she brought them inside, wrapped them in blankets, and gave them warmth. But she had no idea that this simple act of kindness would change her life forever. By morning, her peaceful cabin would be surrounded by police cars, flashing lights piercing through the snow, an accusation she never imagined facing. Why were the puppies linked to a dangerous crime? What secret were they carrying? The truth would leave an entire town stunned and her life changed forever. This is not just a story of rescue, it's a mystery that will leave you breathless. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The evening brought unrelenting fury, with thick flakes of snow blanketing every trail, every housetop, and every branch under a dense layer of frost. Inside her modest log home on the outskirts of the hamlet, the aged lady perched near the glass pane, her needles clicking softly while flames danced in the fireplace. She had become accustomed to the quiet hush of chilly evenings, yet this one carried an extra weight, a deeper chill that pressed on her spirit, stirring a vague discomfort. She drew her wrap closer over her frame, gazing out at the raging tempest. Existence had grown solitary for her lately, and these frosty seasons merely amplified that isolation into something profound. While gusts battered the wooden sides of her dwelling, she caught a peculiar noise, subtle at first, resembling a distant wail. Initially, she brushed it off as the storm's moan, but it echoed once more, sharper now. Her pulse quickened gently as she stood, grasping a lamp, and swung open the entrance. Icy air surged inward, nipping at her flesh. There, directly on her veranda, clustered amid the drifts, sat a pair of small canines. Their coats were rigid from the freeze, their forms shaking violently. The lady let out a quiet breath of surprise, grasping in that instant that she beheld beings teetering on the brink of oblivion. Without hesitation, the senior resident gathered the quivering youngsters against her chest and hurried them indoors, sealing the portal against the harsh bite outside. Their frames felt rigid, their cries weak, yet she detected the faint pulse of vitality lingering in them. Placing them tenderly on a mat beside the hearth, she dashed to retrieve a worn coverlet, enfolding them with care as though handling delicate treasures. Moments dragged on until their shivers lessened a bit. She filled a shallow dish with heated dairy and coaxed their little snouts toward it. At the outset, they lacked the strength to sip, but gradually, as heat permeated their chilled bones, they drank with enthusiasm, their stubs of tails flickering weakly. Observing their battle for endurance awakened a profound tenderness within her, a glow absent for ages. For what seemed like the first occasion in an eternity, her home no longer echoed with emptiness. The small animals gazed upward at her with broad, shiny orbs, as if recognizing her as their guardian. A gentle grin curved her mouth. Yet, as her gaze drifted to the iced-over pane, a doubt hovered like an ominous cloud. From whence had they arrived? And for what reason, amid such a lethal tempest, had they appeared at her threshold? Though the interior glowed with heat from the steady blaze, tranquility evaded the darkness. As the elderly lady eased into her seat, she observed that the young dogs showed no signs of relaxation. Rather than snuggling down for rest, they stayed vigilant, their ears perking at each subtle shift in the structure. Their stares repeatedly shifted to the glazed window, as though detecting an invisible threat. She attempted to calm them, caressing their pelts softly, murmuring gentle reassurances, but their agitation only intensified. Now and then, one emitted a piercing yelp, succeeded by a deep rumble that accelerated her heartbeat. She dismissed it inwardly, convincing herself it stemmed merely from the novelty of their surroundings. Nevertheless, their fixed gaze into the obscurity disturbed her deeply. It was at that point she spotted an anomaly. While readjusting the wrap around one of the little ones, her touch grazed a subtle mark encircling its throat. It was slender, yet profound enough to indicate prior restraint. A shiver ran along her spine. The other pup bore a similar sign, with a tattered hide band still attached loosely, bearing etched digits that had dulled over time. Her respiration halted briefly. These weren't typical wanderers. They had belonged to someone, treated harshly. The senior woman leaned away, drawing the cover closer about the duo. Although worry churned in her core, she had pulled them from the icy peril. But maybe she had invited a far more intricate situation into her sanctuary. As daylight eventually pierced the horizon, the blizzard had subsided, draping the landscape in a sparkling expanse of purity. The aged resident roused from her spot, the young dog snuggled near her ankles. She extended her limbs, preparing to venture out for fuel to stoke the flames. However, upon parting the entrance, her inhale froze in her lungs. Pulsing azure and crimson beams shattered the calm of the frost-laden settlement. Law enforcement trucks formed a semicircle encircling her abode, their motors purring softly. Clad in uniforms, the enforcers advanced purposefully across the powder, their communicators buzzing. Villagers clustered afar, murmuring and gesturing at her residence. Bewilderment enveloped her as she gripped the threshold, squinting against the glaring illumination. A towering, resolute lawman neared with authority. "Madam," he declared resolutely, "we must converse with you. Please move aside." His glance darted beyond her into the interior, where the pair of young dogs rested serenely by the warmth. The lady's ticker thumped wildly. "What's going on?" she inquired, her tone quivering with dread and incredulity. Yet the lawman offered no reply. Rather, he gestured to his colleagues, and swiftly, additional forces encircled her deck. The spectacle rendered her speechless. What prompted the officials' presence? Why did they scrutinize her dwelling as if it concealed a grave enigma? And most puzzling, why did their focus lock so fiercely on the very creatures she had salvaged from the drifts? The elderly lady's limbs trembled as she permitted the lawman entry. The young dogs whined, huddling tight to her calves, as if perceiving the peril lingering nearby. One enforcer crouched down, his keen vision trained on the hide loop swaying from the tinier canine's collar. He raised it delicately, wiping off the ice and grime. The blurred figures sharpened. "This isn't coincidental," he murmured, eyeing his commander. "It's the identifier we've pursued." The senior woman's forehead creased. "Identifier? What identifier?" "They're simply unfortunate roamers I discovered amid the flurry." Her speech faltered with perplexity, but the lawmen shared meaningful glances. The chief enforcer rose, his demeanor steadfast yet composed. "Madam, these canines aren't commonplace. They pertain to a felonious network we've probed for weeks. They were conditioned as sentinels to safeguard illicit goods and unlawful activities. During an operation the prior evening, various beasts fled. These pair form part of that assembly." Her pulse surged, her palm automatically shielding her lips. She peered downward at the youngsters, their guileless gazes brimming solely with faith and apprehension. "But they're merely infants," she murmured softly. "Indeed," the lawman concurred in a hushed tone. "Not mature enough for complete conditioning, but branded. And that renders them proof." His statement hit her like a frigid blast. Proof. The aged resident's mind reeled. She believed she was preserving two vulnerable entities from the gale. Instead, she had inadvertently positioned herself amid a hazardous inquiry. For an extended interval, the dwelling fell hushed, save for the popping embers and the muted cries of the young dogs. The senior lady's emotions knotted. Whether evidence or otherwise, to her they represented vital souls that had endured the tempest for renewal. Her words shook as she addressed the enforcers. I beg you, don't remove them. They've endured plenty already. The primary lawman paused. Protocol required seizing the animals, but he noted the plea in her expression, the manner in which the small beings clung to her garment for protection. He conferred briefly with his squad, then exhaled deeply. They're insufficiently grown to pose a threat, and they've supplied the details we sought. If you agree to tend them, madam, they may remain. A wave of solace surged through her. She sank to the floor, embracing the young dogs tightly, moisture sparkling in her vision. You're secure here, she breathed into their coats. No harm will come to you anymore. The canines nuzzled her fingers, their short appendages swishing for the initial instant since her discovery. The lawmen departed, restoring the abode to its serene glow. From the pain, she observed the blinking signals recede into the wintry expanse, the turmoil of the preceding hours now a lingering echo. She turned to the youngsters nestled by the blaze, their inhalations even, their expressions finally serene. A tender beam graced her features. At times, she comprehended, destiny presents its heaviest trials, masked as blessings, and by saving them, she had unwittingly liberated herself from the quiet void that had previously dominated her existence.